Podcast 84, Employed. Podcast 84, Employed, relates how the Little Tennessee Valley Educational Cooperative employed me and what I learned concerning the creation and mission of the cooperative, LTVEC, in the summer of 1973. As I had stated in the last podcast, Podcast 83, one evening late in May 1973, I got a call from Dr. Bill Oakes. He wanted to meet with me about a position as a school psychologist with an educational cooperative he directed. It was located in Alcoa, Tennessee. This was exciting. I'd never heard of an educational cooperative in Tennessee, but that was all right. I needed to find a position for the fall. If everything went as planned, I'd defend my dissertation in early July and graduate from the university in late August. That would end my graduate assistantship and my GI educational benefits. I intended to be employed as a doctoral-level school psychologist in the fall. Up to this point, I assumed that there were no open positions for the doctoral-level school psychologist in Tennessee. This might just be my opportunity. I might have an opportunity to be employed by an educational cooperative located near my home. The Little Tennessee Valley Educational Cooperative's offices were located in a wing of the administrative building for the Alcoa City School System. Dr. Oakes met me there. He was 50-ish, with blonde hair cut in the typical military crew-cut style. Enthusiastically, he provided me with a background of the cooperative and its need for a newly created position of Director of Psychological and Special Education Services. The position was to start in July. He explained that there were 7 school systems in the recently created cooperative. The information he provided me was complex and a little overwhelming. There were 3 county school systems in the counties that bordered each other near Von Orr, Tennessee, and 4 city school systems within those counties. Blount County had 3 school systems in it: Blount County Schools, Alcoa City Schools, and Maryville City Schools. Blount County was just south of Knox County. Blount County was east of Loudoun County. Monroe County lay on Blount County's southeastern border. Both Blount and Loudoun bordered Monroe County on their south sides. All 3 counties came together in the Von Orr area. Loudoun County's 2 school systems were the Loudoun County Schools and the Lenoir City Schools. Monroe County had 2 school systems as well: the Monroe County Schools and the Sweetwater City Schools. Since we lived near the Blount County line in Knox County, and our favorite grocery store was in Maryville, I had a sense of familiarity with Blount County. The other 2 counties were unknown to me. My 2 years in Tennessee had been focused on being a graduate student. There hadn't been much time for a lot of sightseeing. It was difficult to see the other 2 counties in my mind. Very shortly, that disorientation was to be a thing of the past. Dr. Oakes went on to explain that the cooperative was created in 1971 as a result of a study conducted by the University of Tennessee. The Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, had contracted with the university to conduct a study as a way of determining the most effective strategies for managing the educational and human services aspect of the model city it planned to create. The intention was to manage these services in such a manner that the 3 counties and their school systems would be equally enhanced. A county commissioner from each of the 3 counties, the 7 school system superintendents, and a school board member from each of the school systems in the counties made up the board of directors of the Little Tennessee Valley Educational Cooperative, LTVEC. Dr. Oakes went on to explain that board of director members would be added to LTVEC's board, representing the citizens of the model city as its population grew. Well, Jerry, no doubt you've heard of the snail darter lawsuit that has halted the closing of the Little T Dam, stated Dr. Oakes. Yes, that's the little fish whose only habitat will be destroyed when the dam is closed, I responded. But I had no idea it was connected to the plans of the educational cooperative. It's my understanding that the closing of the Little Tennessee River Dam has been postponed. All it did for the cooperative was to move us up to Phase 2 of the UT plan. Phase 1 was developing the school system and human services for the model city residents as they moved in. That included constructing the school system's buildings, including facilities for the Regional Vocational Technical Center, a special education center, a fine arts center, and so forth for providing services to both the students in the model city and our 7 school systems. All of the Timberlake school system's buildings would be ready to go before the first residents moved into the model city. Phase 2 was for the cooperative to hire very specialized educators, such as school psychologists, that would be shared by the Timberlake schools, the model city schools, and the member school systems. Fortunately, Dr. Oakes continued, we now have a funding mechanism for starting Phase 2, sharing the talents of highly skilled educators across system boundaries. Tennessee's Department of Education will start funding its new special education laws this July. LTV school systems will pull some of their funding from the state to create school psychological services for themselves through the cooperative. We need someone to set up the program. You have been recommended to me as someone who could do it. Are you interested? Yes, I'm excited about the entire concept of the cooperative. Let me tell you about myself. I related how my past experiences in education had in fact been training grounds for this position. I covered living in various communities as a child, obtaining a teacher's license in Kentucky, working in various summer jobs, including stints on dredge boats off the Texas coast, completing my master's degree in school psychology just before entering the Army, and training special warfare personnel in interactions with indigenous personnel living in third world countries. It was a surprise to me that Dr. Oakes understood the Army experience, as was reflected in the insightful questions he asked about the Army activities. He then explained that he had been a career Army officer in its specialized Ranger units before earning a doctorate in English, teaching at the University of Tennessee, and becoming the administrative assistant to the president of the Tennessee University system. I concluded describing my experiences in education with accounts of my leaving the Army to be a master's level school psychologist in St. Petersburg, Florida, serving 7 all-black inner-city schools that were being integrated for the first time. Then I discussed my 2 years in the University of Tennessee Psychology Department's doctoral school psychology program, concluding that I hoped to graduate in August. Dr. Oakes knew a great deal about my work as a graduate assistant in school psychology during that current year in the Knoxville City Schools. That's how he learned about the possibility of hiring me for this job. He had a friend whose wife was a senior administrator in the school system. Unknown to me, she had been following my work in the system and enthusiastically recommended me to him at a dinner party. Our next step is to get you a copy of the new Tennessee Special Education Law so that you can study it to be prepared to answer questions about it. No doubt the Board of Directors will raise questions about it during their interview with this June. I will recommend that they employ you as their Director of Psychological and Special Education Services. Congratulations, he said, stretching his hand across the table to shake mine. Bill and I met several times after that initial meeting to discuss how much funding would be available for me to hire others, what could be expected of the services to be provided that first year, and how we would ensure each system that it received its fair share of the overall services provided through the cooperative. I referred to Dr. Oakes as Bill, for we quickly became friends. It was a true honor to be mentored by him for the 2.5 years we were together. His accidental death in December 1975 was a great sadness to me and many others. That was when I became the overall director of the cooperative's operations. What an unusual experience the interview with the LTVEC Board of Directors was that June evening. The board met in the basement of a small branch bank in Von Orr. Almost all of the 17 board members were present. The chairman of the board was Dr. Frank McClellan, Dean of Maryville College. He was also the county commissioner representing the Blount County Commission. My mind did not retain the names of the various superintendents, school board members, or other county commissioners. I was to wait in Bill's car until the board of directors was ready to interview me. Bill said that he would provide the board with my background information and my plans for creating a delivery of services model with the funds that they would provide. Bill and I had developed a comprehensive plan for getting the best delivery of services with the funds we thought would be available. I was going to recruit graduate assistants from the University of Tennessee's doctoral school psychology program, which was a joint program between the university's psychology and educational psychology departments. At that time, the going rate for a doctoral graduate assistant school psychology intern working 20 hours a week was $4,000 plus mileage. I would direct the graduate students and provide additional training to them as needed. I would also be involved in testing and evaluating the more complex cases that might arise across system boundaries. In addition, there would be one full-time special education professional to conduct training to teachers throughout the member school systems. Up to this point, none of the teachers had been oriented to the many requirements placed upon general education to serve special needs children in the regular classrooms or trained how to implement those requirements effectively. I would assist in the teacher training process as well, with a particular emphasis on positive behavioral intervention strategies. For those educators interested, I would also provide training in a developmental play strategy designed to assist teachers working with children who had serious behavior problems. I had had extensive experience in these activities in the St. Petersburg schools. My dissertation research had established the value of this intervention process. The size of the bank building where the meeting was to be held was a surprise. It was so small. The building sat starkly on the side of U.S. Highway 411, in a sparse scattering of commercial buildings near the Highway 411 bridge crossing the Little Tennessee River. The walk down the narrow stairwell with Bill into the building's basement was full of excitement for me. The stairs led us into a conference room off of a small hallway. The board members were seated around three sides of tables pushed together to form a rectangle. Two empty chairs sat at the top of the rectangle nearest the stairwell. Bill motioned for me to sit in one of the chairs. He proceeded to sit in the other. All of the board members appeared to be around Bill's age or older. By appearance, Dr. McClellan, the chairman, was the oldest person in the room. He made a very distinguished appearance. The board members' attire suggested that they represented a diverse mixture of backgrounds. 2 or 3 men wore white shirts and ties, as I did. Several wore open-collar shirts that had been well pressed. A few of the board members were dressed more casually. One member looked like my Uncle Edward, coming home to supper after a long day's work in the fields of his farm back in Ohio. In my excitement, I knew that the names and positions of the board members presented to me would never anchor themselves in my mind that evening. However, I did note that the man who reminded me of my Uncle Edward was a school board member for a county school system. Questions flowed from the board members concerning my understanding of the new special education law. In response to those questions, I noted that I had had the opportunity to study the law in its entirety. I thought it was just what was needed to assist regular classroom teachers in helping many of the struggling students already in their classrooms. My experiences in the St. Petersburg and Knoxville City schools demonstrated to me the large number of children with learning disabilities and emotional problems currently among the students in a regular classroom. The lack of resources to assist classroom teachers in addressing the educational needs of these children was extremely frustrating to the teachers and a major hindrance to the affected children as they tried to learn what the teacher was teaching. We, as educators, had often experienced seeing these children fail, becoming discouraged, and simply fade away as school dropouts. In the coming school year, we could make significant steps in stopping this sad cycle. The new special education law provided funding for specialists to be employed by the school systems to set up special programs for learning disabled and emotionally troubled youth. Not all of those programs required the removal of these children from the regular classroom for part or all of the day. A classroom teacher could implement fairly straightforward strategies with many of these children without interfering in her overall classroom teaching strategies. Up to this point, a vast majority of working teachers had not been trained in these strategies or made aware of the state-of-the-art research for assisting these children. That's where professionals, trained as I was, could be of great assistance. We knew how to identify the children with the various disabilities the law mandated be addressed, and how to address many of those disabilities. I was prepared for the questions I received as to how I could manage employing graduate assistants from the school psychology doctoral program in such a way that they would be able to determine which children had what disabilities and made recommendations for implementing the necessary intervention strategies. The answers I provided the board revolved around my unique position in the doctoral program at the university. I was a member of the first group of graduate students to be admitted into the newly created doctoral school psychology program. I was the only entering student with a master's degree in school psychology, the only one with 2 years of experience functioning as a master's level school psychologist in public schools that were actively engaged in major changes. I was also the only one with 2 years' experience in routinely instructing large groups of military officers on issues concerning social change in populations experiencing high levels of stress. As a result of my master's degree, my work as a school psychologist, and my work in psychology while in the Army, I was in the process of completing the doctorate in 2 years rather than the normal 7 years expected of my fellow graduate students. I knew the training they were receiving. It was ideal for the tasks necessary in addressing the requirements of school psychologists in the schools. In addition, I knew which of the graduate students had the most highly developed skills and possessed those intangible qualities necessary for relating to teachers encountering stressful changes. I was confident that we could be of significant assistance to the school system's educators in fulfilling the requirements of the law. The nonverbal feedback the various board members were displaying suggested that they were in agreement with my answers. I was feeling more and more confident about being offered the position until the former county school board member asked me what my opinions were concerning educational strategies to use with hearing impaired and deaf students. Deaf education was not an area of my studies. Informally, I had interacted with the head of the university's deaf education department a little, and had become friends with a young department faculty member, John Berry, doing cutting-edge research in collaboration with researchers in Europe. I knew a little about that research as a result of my friendship with him. My response to the question concerning children with hearing problems was shallow. I acknowledged a lack of in-depth knowledge in the field, while noting that there were specialists at the university that were more than willing to provide assistance to the schools in this area. Many professionals in various specialized fields would need to be engaged in order to meet the specific disabling conditions various children have. "Yeah," he replied, "but what do you know about the verbal tonal approach to assisting children with hearing problems?" This question brought a big smile to my face as I replied, "Well, I suspect that you know John Berry at UT, and you know John is doing some cutting-edge research of the verbal tonal method and how it enables hearing disabled children to be taught in a regular classroom environment." Maintaining my smile, I went on to say, "I suspect you know a lot more about this approach than I do." "Well, my grandson is in their verbal tonal program. It's helping them a lot. It's my hope that the educational cooperative will be helping get this program going in one of our schools so that he can attend regular school." I think that would be outstanding, came my spontaneous response. With that, Dr. Oakes, Bill, asked if there were any more questions. Concluding that the board's questions to me were completed, he directed me to return to his car while the board deliberated on my application. After a few minutes had passed, Bill joined me to announce that I was now an employee of LTVEC. I would start working in July. On the drive back to the Alcoa offices that night, Bill informed me that the farmer board member liked to come across as a good old boy to strangers to see if they would act condescendingly to him. That's how he would get the measure of the person. My response to his question was perfect. I had not fallen into his trap. The guy was a highly regarded national expert in the breeding of an exotic genetic line of cattle, and was currently the president of the Farmers Association for the state. The lesson I had learned and taught at the Army's Special Warfare Center concerning the importance of valuing people from different cultures would be applied often in assisting the graduate assistants and myself during those early years of the Cooperative.